You will never leave any race that will make you as fulfilled like you will when you leave SOS.
I think the SOS Triathlon kind of epitomizes a certain type of lifestyle. It's not the event itself, but the event does represent something bigger.
The course requires a different format, and it requires athletes to respond. If you're a typical triathlete who lives in that type A personality in that box, it has to be I swim, then I bike, then I run. Sure, that's a triathlon. Don wanted to figure out how he could get himself ready for a world championship. Reality is he had a landscape that had 3 mountain lakes, infinite miles of riding, and some of the best running you're going to encounter in the entire world. He said, I've got this natural training ground, which lets me ride my bike around some amazing mountains and cliffs. I get to swim in 3 different lakes, but in order to do that, I got to run from those. So now you start to see this thing come together.
I think the true spirit of the SOS is when you become one with the environment. Those distances were set by nature. All I did was connect the dots.
SOS, broken up with the legs, ends up being 30 miles on the bike, roughly just under 19 miles on the run, and a 2.1 mile swim. I think of SOS as it's organic before organic was cool. The people that say it's not a real triathlon, either A, have not done it, or B, have done it and got their butts kicked.
There's a special feeling about the race, and I think it all stems back to how the race began.
My dad started directing triathlons with the first New York City Triathlon in 1980. So the SOS lineage goes back to the beginning of the sport itself. Listen, people weren't even really taking long jogs in the 1970s or 80s. I remember when I was a little kid, friends would see me in school and say, you know, I saw your father running down the street. I was wondering who was chasing him.
One thing about Don is he always has a goal. And once he reaches his goal, he has the next goal, and then the next goal.
I wanted to qualify for the Ironman. At that time, there was just one Ironman, and that was in Kona, Hawaii. And I live in the valley here, and the only way to get to a beautiful lake to swim was by cycling there. So I used to cycle up to Lake Owasting parking lot, and then I discovered that it was so beautiful up there. And I wanted to not only do it and train for the Ironman, but I also wanted to share it with people.
How are you gonna keep your feet dry?
I'm not.
Swimming with these shoes?
Yeah. I like to think of it in terms of if you see a 2-year-old kid that writes his name beautifully, and then you realize that all he's doing is connecting the dots. And in the Shawangunk Mountains, the dots are Owasting, Minnewaska, and Mohawk.
The event, I don't want to say sort of developed itself, but it certainly took on a life of its own. I remember my father discovering and creating more and more challenging workouts, stringing together the most beautiful parts of the area. The beginning years of the SOS was my mom and dad and some close friends taking over the house completely with envelopes and pictures and a lot of laughs.
Everything happened in our home. Our family, our friends, we're all involved from the beginning. The community took to it very quickly.
People get so emotional about SOS. I mean, there are people that life has changed them. They've dealt with cancer, they've dealt with death, and they want to be here. And that's something that I think he sits back, and I think Darlene sits back and says, well, gee, we've done this right.
He's galvanized an entire community here behind what he does and this race. What he's done for the sport of triathlon, I mean, I can't even measure in words.